The study session of the Aurora City Council for Monday, April 5th, 2021 is called to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
We have an announcement for the call-in line first. I just unmuted.
Okay, please proceed.
Roger, you're unmuted.
Thank you. I'm sorry, is there a opportunity for public comment tonight?
No, there's not.
Okay. Second, thank you for joining this evening's Aurora City Council study session. If you are listening on the phone, please note this is a listen-only meeting. If you are watching on Channel 8 and would like to call and listen on the phone instead, that number is 855-695-3475. Thank you.
Okay.
See, there is no mayor's update. Are there any issue updates? Seeing none, we will commence with planning and zoning interviews. And
do we need roll call, Mayor? Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Please proceed with the roll call.
Mayor Kaufman.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Bergen.
Here.
Councilmember Berzins. Councilmember Coombs.
Present.
Councilmember Gardner. Councilmember Gruber.
Here.
Councilmember Hiltz.
This is Nicole, Councilmember Johnston. Councilmember Hiltz is just running a little late.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Councilmember Lawson.
Here.
Councilmember Johnston.
Here.
Councilmember Marcano.
Present.
And Councilmember Murillo.
Present.
There is a quorum.
Well, we will now proceed with interviews for Planning and Zoning Commission. The applicants will have 2 minutes each to introduce themselves. I will recognize them for that. Then I think it has down here 2.5 minutes for question and the answer. What I want to do is just 2 minutes for the answer because the times may really vary that council members take to ask the question. And so out of fairness, and then there will be a 1 minute for concluding remarks from the applicant. I have Stephen Elkins first.
I believe Jason Schneider is supposed to be first.
Oh, Jason Schneider? Okay.
And he is logged in right now and ready to go.
Okay. Okay, Jason Schneider. Jason, Mr. Schneider?
Yes, good evening.
Thank you very much for applying to be a member of the Planning and Zoning Commission. You now have 2 minutes to introduce yourself to the council members.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Mayor and Council, for having me tonight. My name is Jason Schneider. I live at 2321 South Kenton Street. It's in Ward 4. My wife, Michelle, and I moved here in 2017 after initially moving to the Denver area in 2013. My wife, in 2013, we moved here so that she can go to law school at DU, and I'm proud to report that she's now a rock star corporate attorney at one of what I'm told is the oldest and prestigious law firms in the area. And in that time, since we've been here in the last 8 years, I went to work for a telecom company, AT&T, and it turned out to be a union company. And one thing after another, got involved with that labor union and went on for the Communications Workers of America to represent about 2,000 coworkers in my local area as a vice president. And then for the district for CWA, about 5,000 coworkers in 15 states in the Western region. And then after we moved here in 2017, I was still inspired to continue being active and getting involved with the community and performing community service, as I've really done over the past 30 years or so since I was just a little kid. And I went through the Arapahoe County Sheriff's Office Citizen Police Academy, and then I went through the Aurora Civic Engagement Academy. And graduating from those two citizen academies are a big part, not the only reason, but a big part of why I'm here tonight. It's to continue in that spirit of being engaged and performing community service and being involved in any way that we can to help make Aurora a better place for all of us. And so with that in mind, like I said, I've got like 30 years of experience in community service, in servant leadership roles, and training and grooming that depending on what the questions are for tonight, I'll be happy to touch on. So thank you very much, and I'm ready for your questions.
Councilmember Lawson?
Are you going in order? I thought we're going in order according to.
You know what, who's first up?
It's
Mayor,
it's alphabetical. It's in alphabetical order.
Okay,
So me.
Councilmember, Mayor Pro Tem Bergen.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Jason, for applying for the Planning and Zoning Commission. It's important to have really good people serve on that important commission. Can you describe the criteria that's used by the Planning and Zoning Commission in its decision-making process?
To be completely honest, I cannot. I'm a member of 3 different boards and commissions currently, each of which I applied for, not having any expertise already in serving. That's part of what being a servant leader means to me is the educational process that comes from participating and volunteering. So I have a little bit of experience with planning and zoning, having spoken once at the public invited to be heard on behalf of my neighborhood association. I can speak to things like that, but if the questions tonight are more of a technical nature as to how planning and zoning actually works, my goal is just to get past the nervousness and the fears and doubts in my own head about volunteering for things like this, and consider that it's as much a learning curve and a learning process for me, a quick study, that in the first few meetings, just like the previous 3 boards and commissions that I'm still serving on, I can pick up the ins and outs and learn the ropes and become a good and faithful servant.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councilmember Burzins is not with us tonight. Councilmember Coombs.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Jason, for being here to interview with us today. My question is, how would you, as a member of the Planning and Zoning Commission, ensure affordability of both for sale and rental housing?
Okay, thank you for your question. And in my experience, in my career as a realtor, I have come across some of the elements and some of the aspects that are part of what planning and zoning is. One thing that comes to mind right now is a term that was inclusionary zoning, right? And if I understand it correctly at this stage, what that means is that all housing going forward may include some percentage of its total units be set aside for affordable housing. And in serving on the Citizens Advisory Committee for Housing and Community Development, we review and give a vote of confidence in projects that are coming down the pike, which do set aside at least a percentage of its units, if not all of its units, for affordable housing. Now, the committee, at least I'll just speak for myself on this, I think it echoes with the rest of the committee that we mostly see projects that include affordable units in the 60 to 80% area median income range. And there's been a growing sentiment among my fellow committee members and I on CHD that we'd love to see more housing coming down the line that also applies to our extremely low income neighbors, those who are in the 0 to 30% AMI. And I'm familiar with some of the governing documents that we use in the city, like the UDO and Aurora Places and the comprehensive plan, and most recently the housing strategy that's coming out, which identified a shortage of housing stock both on the lower end and on the high end. And so that's my hope, is that as we continue to grow as a city, we'll see a lot more interest among developers and groups who want to help those of our neighbors who need it the most. Thank you.
Let's see, Councilmember Gardner is not, is excused tonight. Councilmember Gruber.
Thank you, Mayor. So talking about the affordable housing again, I'm kind of curious, can you share your thoughts on how housing that sells below cost should be funded?
Thank you, Councilmember Gruber. The prevailing thought in my mind as to how it should be funded is that developers who are already obtaining the funds to develop their projects, it's honestly my hope that for those developers, they can incorporate affordable housing into their projects if it's not an entirely affordable housing project, without sacrificing on their overhead or their margins. If a developer can make the same margin and cover their overhead to the same extent that they do with market priced housing, then I would hope to see a market for affordable housing that continues to grow in which they're incentivized to do so. I have come across from following meetings and trying to read up on the subject, whether or not incentives should be used to entice and attract developers to the area for the purpose. To be completely honest, I don't know. I don't have a definitive answer as to how I feel about whether or not these incentives should be applied and then the city takes a hit, or whether we should be applying these fees for developers, the impact fees and things like that, I believe it's called. It's something that if I were to be appointed to this role, I would look very much forward to learning a lot more about in the early months of service, and then hopefully being able to contribute in a meaningful way along with the other 6 commissioners. Thanks, Councilman Gruber.
Thank you.
Councilmember Hiltz. Is Councilmember?
I'm muted. Yeah, I was muted. I muted myself. Thank you for being here. My question is, I think, a fairly simple one, but might be more complicated than it first sounds. What is the biggest planning issue or problem that you see in today's process?
To be completely honest, thank you, Councilmember Hiltz. It's honestly a little bit of a difficult question for me because I don't yet have a thorough background or experience in planning and zoning specifically. I've worked for 20 years as a realtor, mostly with new home sales, with property management. I've worked in a developer's office, but I'm a little bit short on, the answers to the questions that I hope to find by being a part of this process going forward. So I really don't know if I have a good answer for you on that right now. My goal in applying for this role is that it would be a wonderful learning opportunity for me to participate. The best way to learn is to do for me. And I take comfort in the fact that there are 7 commissioners and that the decisions aren't up to me alone. And actually in the last 3 boards I've been on, I'm actually kind of quiet in the very beginning because it's part of the process of trying to learn the answers to these questions. So yeah, it's kind of a simple question when you get into it, but if you haven't gotten into it before, I really don't know where to go with that. So I hope that answers your question to some degree, and that I'll be able to report back with a much better answer if appointed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Johnston.
Sorry about that. My mute was a little slow. Thank you, Jason, for applying and being here today, and for all the community service you have done. I have a question in terms of if you could give me an example of a well-planned project that we have in the city of Aurora, and what makes it a well-planned project.
Thank you, Councilmember Johnston. One of the things that I'm looking forward to is what I'm seeing with the plans that are just in the works right now for the next 10 to 20 years. So I participated in the Havana Corridor study, learning a little bit about what's to come and being able to provide some resident feedback on that. And living just off of Iliff in Havana, we're super excited for what's coming down the line in terms of its future development. It looks like there is a lot in the way of retail, shopping and dining and entertainment options. It also, something I took away from the Civic Engagement Academy is that it's right on the border with Denver. And so we don't just want Aurorans paying sales taxes for their goods and services alone. We want residents from Denver also coming over and enjoying what Aurora has to offer as well. And the biggest draw for that is that it's on that line between Denver and Aurora. And I also took part in the study. It was about the Aurora Municipal Center area and making that into a vibrant downtown that has easy transportation options to and from. A lot of walkability that seems to play prominently in all of these studies, and what the leading factors are going into how these are being developed. And then, I've also been down to the Southlands area, and I've been up to Stapleton, to Stanley Marketplace a little bit. All of these just seem really well placed. And if I could throw one more thing out there, the transportation-oriented districts that are coming up with a mix of housing, it sounds like, right around easy access to the rail stations. That was one of the big reasons why we moved here to Aurora in 2017. My wife works downtown, and we wanted the ability to be able to get really easily to a station where we can commute without traffic and without parking. I'm sorry
to interrupt. That was 2 minutes.
No problem. Thank you. That's enough
great.
for me.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
Councilmember Lawson.
Hi, Jason. Thank you for applying. My question to you is, describe where the city should be in 10 years.
It's my understanding, thank you, Councilmember Lawson. It's my understanding that over, I don't know if it's 10 years or more or less, but we're looking at a population growth to about 440,000. Maybe it's based on current trends and where we've come from. And I think there's another 80,000 rooftops or so being planned going forward. So I just hope that the city continues on its current path of being diverse and inclusive and having a lot of different options for a lot of different residents to make it a great place for all of us to live. And I think that's it for that one. I can't think of anything else to say. Thanks, Councilmember Lawson.
Councilmember Marcano.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for joining us, Jason. My question to you is, what factors would you consider when an applicant requests a waiver for their project?
The things that I would consider, thank you, Councilmember Marcano. Things that I would consider are what kind of project is being developed and for who. If the developer is coming forward with a project that satisfies a need we have, like I mentioned before in the housing study, it was apparent from that study that we have a healthy stock of housing in the middle of the market, but we are at a loss for affordable housing, especially at the extremely low income end, and then also for high-end housing for folks who are stepping up. And I think that's important too, because if folks don't have a home to step up into, we're not opening up opportunities in the middle market where there's supposed to be a healthy housing stock. And right now the market's just so crazy. There's only like a couple of weeks of inventory available. So I think that the sooner we can open up some more opportunities, the better, so that there isn't so much pressure on so few homes available. If those developers are coming through asking for a waiver and they have an eye toward affordable housing and knowing that, we have a range of residents in different income ranges, that would be particularly appealing to me. And just to reiterate again, in the early stages, if appointed, I would be looking very much to the other 6 commissioners for guidance and support and education on how to evaluate this and to measure and weigh it out. Thanks, Councilmember Marcano.
Councilmember Murillo.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Jason, for your time. How do you and would you infuse equity in your decision-making process as a commissioner?
Thank you, Councilmember Murillo. It would play a big role for me. To me, diversity and inclusion is very important. It's one of the reasons why we moved to Aurora, knowing that that is a part of the fabric of this city. And so when I think about the future development of the city, I think about areas like Ward 1 and how we can continue to level up that area. When we're on CHD and we're looking at the neighborhood revitalization strategic area, that includes much, if not all, if I'm not mistaken, of Ward 1. And it's my understanding that Ward 1 is more diverse potentially than the rest of the city. And I would look for projects that focus on enhancing the lives of the folks who already live there and helping them build equity for themselves without dislocating them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jason. If you have 1 minute for a wrap up.
All right. Thank you, Mayor Kaufman. And thank you, Mayor Kaufman, for the recommendation for positive restorations rescue.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's where you got your dog. Yeah. So we're in the market for a dog right now, and we're following them now. Sure. It's been an incredible honor just to interview for this, and it's also been incredibly frightening. This is not easy. I don't know how you all do this all the time. I did it because, in large part, I felt like it was a duty to do. When you look at the requirements for applying, it's not a high bar. From the questions I was asked this evening, there's a lot more technical aspects to serving that may be of interest from an ideal candidate. Honestly, I don't know if I'm an ideal candidate. I just read the requirements for what it takes to apply. And I thought, if I don't apply, what did I go to Civic Engagement Academy for? And how am I inspiring others who are currently going through that academy to do the same and to step up and to volunteer to help make the community better, to help all of you with your decision making. And I think most of the expertise for the questions we've been asking tonight, hopefully, will lie mostly with staff, the planning staff, and all of the staff at the other boards I sit on. They're wonderful, and I trust them 99.9% to lead us in the right direction. I feel like the commissions and boards are a way of providing some citizen feedback prior to getting to council. And I don't know if we have to be experts in the specific field or not, or whether it's just important to have neighbors who care. And that's what I am. So thank you all so much for having me this evening. I'll be thinking long and hard after this about everything I could have said or said better. And I hope that y'all have a good time with the rest of your interviews. Thank you all very much.
Jason, thank you. Thank you for applying.
Thank you.
Sarah Castle.
Sarah is on the line.
Can you hear me? Hi there.
Okay. Oh, Sarah, thank you so much.
Yes.
For being with us this evening. And you have 2 minutes to introduce yourself and tell us why you want to be on the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Okay, well, I'm Sarah Castle. I am a Colorado native. Actually goes back about 3 generations. My great-grandparents homesteaded near Bar Lake, and they had a bakery out there in Brighton. And I have really been interested in government and political science my whole life. I studied in social studies education, and political science was my minor. I didn't actually do a lot with that because I ended up teaching elementary school and went on, into software company and other opportunities. But I've always had an interest in political science and government, and I would like very much to be a part of the planning committee. I recently took a local government class. With all the opportunities online these days, it was easy for me to take this little class, and it was encouraging local participation as an opportunity to make a difference and get involved. And that was very appealing to me, and it seemed to be the right time. I am homeschooling my children. I was a teacher, and so I have that experience, and I didn't want to miss out on the opportunity to teach my own children. But I do have some time to be able to commit to making a difference in our community and I've been able to help over at the Cherry Creek Retirement Village. With my children and I have been taking cards to encourage the people there. But this is just another way I think that it could be a bigger opportunity to be involved.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem, you will be asked questions by the council members, and you'll have 2 minutes to answer each question, starting with Mayor Pro Tem Bergen.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Sarah, for applying to the Planning and Zoning Commission. My question is, can you describe some of the criteria used by the Planning and Zoning Committee in its decision-making process?
I believe that you use the document that is referred to as the UDO, the Unified Development Ordinance. I'm not sure how much you participated in developing and updating that. I understand it was updated in December. But as far as the other documents, I looked online at quite a few of the documents there. And I don't know what else you would use besides the UDO to help you make decisions, but I'm assuming it would be the laws that are available in our city.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Councilmember Coombs.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Sarah, for applying. My question is, as a member of the Planning and Zoning Commission, what would you do to ensure affordability of rental and for sale homes in the city of Aurora?
I didn't know that I would be able to have that much influence, but I would want to work to understand each application that was presented and consider what was best for Aurora. I would have to look at all of the information provided to me to be able to make the best decision regarding that, but I'm guessing that it would help affordability. Yeah, I would have to really look into that and research it because off the top of my head, I do not know a good answer for that. I apologize.
Councilmember Gruber.
I'm afraid this might follow down the same line, Sarah. So can you share your thoughts on how housing that sells for below cost should be funded?
Yes, you're right. So did you say how the low cost housing should be funded?
Yes.
Yes, I'm sorry. I do not have a good answer for you either.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Hills. Councilmember Hills.
Yeah, sorry, I was putting the little one down. Hello, thank you for being here.
Hi.
I wanted to ask you just a quick question that's either simple or complicated. I'll let you decide. And that is, what is the biggest planning issue or problem that you see in Aurora today?
Biggest planning problem or issue in Aurora? I would have to go with traffic. Hi. At the moment, sorry, what was that? I would say traffic is one of our biggest concerns at the moment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Johnston.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Sarah, for being here today and applying. Can you give me an example of a well-planned project in the city of Aurora and what makes it a well-planned project in your opinion?
That's a good question. I really cannot think of a specific example off the top of my head, but I do like projects that stay within the budget. I like projects that can meet the needs of the people as far as accessibility, parking. I like projects that look aesthetically pleasing. It bothers me when I see the mold just sliding off the hill and, you know, plants are dying, things like that. I think that the property should be well maintained. I think that the building should be, you know, buildings should be designed well so that people can come in and out. The flow of traffic is efficient. So I apologize, I don't have a specific example for Aurora, but those are some of the things that are important to me in a project.
Oh, those are good. Thank you.
Councilmember Marcano.
All right. Oh, you skipped Lawson.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Lawson.
Okay, thank you, Sarah, for applying to the Planning Commission. In your perspective, where should the city be in 10 years?
Well, I like where we're going. I appreciate that we have a tech center. I appreciate that we have a lot of multicultural opportunities and restaurants and an experience that's multicultural. I would like to see us move more towards additional tech companies coming our way. I would like to see greater care for our refugees. I'm very interested in the arts and in recreation centers. It's been hard not to have those as available as they have been in the past. I really care a lot about traffic and the flow of our people. So I would like to see some improvements there with light rail and so forth.
Thank you. Councilmember Marcano.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Sarah, for joining us this evening. So what factors would you consider when an applicant requests a waiver for their project?
Does the waiver, I don't know what the waiver does. Does the waiver give them more time?
It would, in this case, exempt you or, yeah, basically exempt you from a portion of the UDO or code otherwise.
Okay. So the qualifications for the waiver, is that what you have?
Yeah, what kind of, what would you consider if someone were to ask for a waiver for their project?
Okay, so I would have to consider the budget and the timeline, the commitments of all that the project is involving. It's possible that the cost would be too great, so we wouldn't be able to grant the waiver, but we'd have to look at their reasoning and what was involved in their request before we would be able to grant the waiver.
All right.
Thank you. Councilmember Murillo.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you for your time today. Can you explain how do you currently or will you infuse equity into your decision-making process as part of the commission?
Well, I'm an analytical thinker. I like to be fair in what I decide. So I would want to make sure that I wasn't allowing any kind of prejudice to, cloud my thinking or obstruct my view. And one good thing about me is I don't have any negative experience with the Planning and Zoning Commission. I don't have any negative experience with anything particular in our city. So I don't have any barriers currently in my thinking about that. So I could be a fair and just person when I was considering those things.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you so much for applying. You now have 1 minute for concluding remarks.
Okay. Well, I do not have a great deal of experience in being in a commission. I also do not have a great deal of architectural or design experience, but I do believe that I have enough experience in those things. I was able to participate in a build out in my company, and they actually chose my plan. And so I do have some familiarity there, and I believe that I would be an asset to the team. And I would love to join in and learn. I'm eager and willing to learn, and I would appreciate the opportunity to do that with you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Let's see, Sunny Banka, sorry.
Mayor, we're a few minutes ahead of schedule, so I did call Sunny and let her know she can log in early, so she'll be here in
Okay.
about 1 or 2 minutes.
Okay.
There we go.
Sunny, thank you so much for applying to be on the Planning and Zoning Commission. And so I'm going to give you 2 minutes for an opening statement where you can tell us about yourself and why you want to be on the Planning and Zoning Commission. And then you'll have questions from each council member, and you'll have 2 minutes to answer those. And then 1 minute I'll recognize you at the end for 1 minute for concluding remarks. So you have 2 minutes. Please start.
All right, thank you. Well, I have actually sat before you all previously as I had applied with the last openings. My name is Sunny Banka, as you know. I am a longtime Aurora resident. I have lived in Aurora since 1974. I've been a realtor and worked primarily Aurora South and the Southeast area, Centennial, and I've been a realtor since 1979. So it's 42 years this year. I own my own real estate company, so I am a business owner. My company address is actually in Greenwood Village, just because of the location of my agents and various, whatnot. But we do a tremendous amount of business in the Aurora area. I have served on CABC since probably about 1998. I was on community development before that. I have served over the years on numerous committees within the city. I was on the Aurora Places committee. I have been involved, when they had a foreclosure task force, I was on that. I've done a lot to try to bring the city of Aurora to the realtors and the realtors to the city of Aurora, so we could work together on various issues. For example, the Alameda interchange. I know that was long before many of your time, but the realtors were very involved in helping get that passed. We usually work to support a lot of the school issues and various issues, including transportation issues, I might say. So I do a lot within the realtor organization. I have been twice the Aurora chair, and we have now merged with Smedra, but I am on that merged board of directors. I serve as a director for the state of Colorado for the realtors, and I also serve at the national level on their risk management committee for the national.
I don't want to interrupt you. I'm sorry, but that was your 2 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Bergen.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Sunny, for applying for the Planning and Zoning Commission. It's a very important commission. My question is, can you describe the criteria or some of the criteria used by the Planning and Zoning Commission in its decision-making process?
Well, thank you. And I would just like to thank you also for reaching out to me with my issue the other day. There were several of you that did. So the criteria, I don't know the specific criteria, but it would be my understanding that the criteria would have to comply with the city zoning, the code enforcement and the code issues, lot sizes, parking availability, planning, design, and meet the various city requirements, state and federal, governmental requirements, environmental issues. All of that I would imagine would have to be taken into consideration before a project was approved, or at least anything I've been involved with, that has been my experience. And I realize that there's public comments and they have the right to put input. So not only would it be just the requirements, but the public has an input period as well. And I don't know, did that answer the question?
Yes, thank you very much.
You bet.
Councilmember Coombs.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Sunny, for being here and applying. My question is, as a planning and zoning commissioner, how would you promote affordability in rental and for sale housing?
How would I promote affordability? So let me just tell you that I am involved with the Realtor organization, and we are actually running 4 bills at the state legislature to try to help with affordability. There's not one magic silver bullet. I do serve on LPC. I'm not a lobbyist, but I do serve on their legislative policy committee, and I have for over 20 years. We are trying to, do things like have renters credit apply so that perhaps instead of renters, they could be buyers, or, if they are paying their rent on time, at least get that reported to a credit bureau so that maybe they would be in a situation where they'd be a good tenant and be able to get into either housing more affordable or by using credit and developing good credit. We're trying to get something into the schools so that the young people coming out of high school know a little bit about credit and rental, so that they could get in. It's just like buying a car. If you have bad credit, you don't get the best rates, whether you're buying or whether you're selling. And that doesn't do anything with the actual market and pricing. And a lot of that, I've been a realtor long enough, the market will take care of a lot of that. I mean, right now it's really high and it's really bad, but we all know that what goes up will probably come down a little bit, maybe not enough. And I have some thoughts on the affordable housing piece too, but, certainly when you've got good credit and you're educated on how to deal with your credit, you are going to get a better rate, a better deal, a better rent, a better interest rate, that type of thing. So did I answer your question? Sometimes I get off on a tangent and dance way beyond it. And I do apologize to you again. You left off my original email. So that I sent to the rest of the council a week or so ago. But you've all been great in responding, so thank you.
Oh, you're good. Thank you.
You bet.
Councilmember Gruber.
Hi, Sunny. Again, thanks for applying. Can you share your thoughts on how housing that sells for below market cost should be funded?
Housing that sells for below market cost, how it should be funded. So I serve on a mastermind group that has the gentleman that reports with Metrolink to all of the builders, and also a number of big builders are involved as well. And as far as building homes that are less, below market rate, below what they could get, their suggestion is maybe they get municipalities, cities, and counties to waive some of the tap fees and some of the fees that are involved at the city level to incentivize them to build more affordable housing. The problem with, less than affordable housing is the cost of everything to make it inhabitable. So lumber costs right now are very, very high. And so, people need to be compensated. Believe it or not, on new construction, everybody thinks that if they're selling at 800,000, they're making a lot of money. The margin's very low. And that, some of these fix and flippers that are trying to buy them below market. And when you ask about selling below market, I don't know if you're talking resale or if you're talking new construction. The way that resale currently, the condition it is in, will have a lot to determine the value. But you don't necessarily want to put a low to mod income purchaser in a resale that needs a lot of work, because they're not going to be able to afford to do what needs to be done unless it's a rental property. And then, of course, it would be the landlord's responsibility. But the biggest thing right now is because the cost of labor, lumber, believe it or not, financing, because they're short-term construction loans, those issues all make it expensive. So, the way that might incentivize them, I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice. According to the, and trust me, it's just allergies, but according to the builders, would be to have some incentives on the tap fees, the water and sewer tap fees and some of the other municipal fees that they pay. I don't know if that's the right answer from a council perspective, but I know that that's what they are saying would incentivize that for low to mod income building.
Thank you.
Councilmember Hiltz.
Thank you. Thank you for being here and for applying. I have a question that could be either really simple or complicated. I'll let you decide. And that is, what is the biggest planning issue or problem that you see in the city today?
The biggest I love that question, actually. The biggest issue that I am seeing right now is the older neighborhoods and maintaining them. And things like an issue I have in my own older neighborhood, lighting, and keeping the crime down so that you don't have everybody selling and possibly turning into rental property. I mean, they're going to be rentals, but they're expensive rents. So I think you need to maintain some of the older neighborhoods, whether that's lighting, making the streets look nice so that those people aren't looking to up and move. And I'm sure somebody will ask me a question about gentrification, and that is something that is a little challenging, but if they're already in their homes. So the example I'm going to use is older people, women, men, whatever, they're in their home, they're alone, their spouse is gone, and they want to be able to move, but she's gone, so I don't know if my time's up, but they want to move, but they
no,
can't
I'm still
afford
here.
to move. they can't afford to move, but crime also becomes a fear, and so they move out. But where do they go? And so I think maintaining some of our older neighborhoods would be a planning issue, and also making sure that transportation. I love what they are doing at Painted Prairie, where you just have a nice mix of everything, and with the planning that's been done and the things that the city's doing, that's a development where you can work, live, and play, and you don't have to go very far. And I think trying to make sure we have those opportunities, as we go forward, so that we don't have people on our streets, that maybe they can use, public transportation to get to the work. But to me, that's a big issue. Did I answer your question?
You did, thank you. And I just had to prevent someone pulling something down on their head, so I just had to run away real quick. But you're in my ears, so you're still here.
No worries.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you. Thank you, Sunny, for being here and applying. You touched a little upon the question that I'm going to ask. I loved your Ward 2 example, by the way, with Painted Prairie. I wanted to ask you if you could give me an example of a well-planned project, and in your opinion, what makes that well-planned? I know that you just touched upon this, but if there was anything else that you wanted to add, or if that addresses it, I'm fine either way.
I'll just embellish it a little bit. I think it's a beautiful community, and I know young people are really excited to be out there. Obviously, it's new and attractive, but there's a lot of new and attractive. But the big pieces to that development is the work, live, and play. That is what redeveloped all of the Highlands over off of 29th and Federal and that area, and that seems to be where the more millennial, the younger generation wants to be. I hate to say that people my age, or some of them, my clients at least, they want a lot of space, a lot of land, and their cars, and maybe 2 or 3 of them, or 4 or 5. But younger people are very interested in the environment and riding a bike and bike paths and being able to access everything really close by. And I think, and I love what they've done with all the open space in Painted Prairie.
Thank you.
You bet.
Councilmember Lawson.
Hi, Sunny. Thank you for applying for the Planning Commission. My question to you is, from your perspective, where should the city be in 10 years?
Where should it be in 10 years as far as development? I think in 10 years, obviously, I believe Aurora will be pushing right up against the population of Denver. And, I do believe that it's going to be important that we look at situations where people don't have to drive to Denver to work. Right now we have, I think everybody knows people, they live in Aurora because we are probably one of the more, if not the most affordable housing. Richmond builds a house in Aurora. It's going to be $10,000 to $20,000, $30,000 cheaper than the same house. In fact, when they were building one of the floor plans on Lowry, they could build it out at Talon's Reach, and it was $100,000 difference in price. Same square footage, same house. And yet those people would leave Talon's Reach and they would drive into Denver to work. And on their way home, they would stop and get groceries and all the things that they needed to do in Denver. So I think in 10 years, I'm hoping that we have more of the work opportunities. We have a lot of great housing, and of course we need to continue that. But I think we need to focus on, some of the jobs. And the city has done a great job with that. Amazon, Prologis, and some of the other big things that have been brought in. But I hope to see that we continue that with some of the growth area. And I know that plan, having been involved in some of the city with Jackson Gap and all this stuff at the Gaylord, I think the city's already doing a great job of moving that forward. You bet. Thank you.
Councilmember Marcano.
Thank you, sir, and thank you, Sunny, for joining us today. I wanted to ask, what factors would you consider when an applicant requests a waiver for their project?
What factors? Okay, so if they're asking for a waiver for their project, obviously, I believe we've got to fall within the city guidelines. I mean, we have codes, we have ordinances, we have statutes, and so we need to look at all of that and then see how that waiver request fits, how those pegs fit into the blocks. And do they fit, or does it make sense to make it fit? I'm not sure that, I've had to ask for waivers when clients were building homes. For example, a waiver that we had to do was down in Douglas County. It was solid granite, the setback. If we moved it over a couple of feet, it saved the buyer, $200,000 or $300,000 in blasting granite. And by the way, this is a multi-million-dollar property, and 2 or 3 acres. But so that made sense, and we were fortunate Douglas County approved it. Now asking to maybe, bring in baby goats like Brighton's allowing within the city, and a waiver for the, farm animal thing, that may not fit, it may not fit. Maybe it does, depending on where it's at, but I think you have to look at the whole picture. And by the way, I want to thank you also. I appreciate your response to me and for returning my call. And so thank you.
Happy to help. Thank you.
Councilmember Murillo.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Sunny. Or is it Sonda?
Well, Sonda's my name, but
okay. I was confused.
That is the name I was born with, but people changed it to Sonda, Sandra, Sonia, a number, so it's been Sunny since high school, and that was a very long time ago. You can call me either.
Okay, so my question is, Sunny, how do you or will you infuse equity in your decision-making process on the commission?
So as far as equity, boy, I'm not 100% sure I understand. I mean, I do believe that the city has got some ordinances and restrictions and requirements, and I think that we have to fall in line with that, but I do believe that the Planning Commission, as well as any part of any group that's working with the city, needs to be out there for everybody. So when you say equity, I think you look and see, how is this going to help the community? How does it fit with the community? Or does it fit with the community? I honestly believe that every decision, regardless of where or what, has got to be fair and equitable. I take pride in the fact that I live in one of the most diverse cities in the United States. And by the way, I have one of the most diverse, office groups that works for me as realtor. So I respect that, and I believe it does have to be equitable to everybody, but you have to stay within the rules and restrictions that are in place, or get them, if they don't make sense, go for a waiver or get them changed.
Sonny, thank you so much. You now have 1 minute for a wrap up, for concluding remarks.
All right. Well, I will just say I've had the opportunity to be on CABC, and I greatly appreciate it. And thank you, Mayor, for reappointing me since 1998, I think it is, or 7, something like that. And I love that committee. But, I have also been here, I get teased by people that I've been around longer than many of the roads in Aurora, and that's true. And so I have a very vested interest from a business standpoint, from being a homeowner. I own multiple properties in Aurora. And so I pay taxes not just one time for a home. Well, I realize those are property taxes are counting more than anything. But long story short, I have a vested interest, and I really do want to see and help be a part of the way the city grows. I've seen what works and what doesn't work. 813 back in the day was the fastest growing zip code in the country. And yet we did things that were so quickly, fence lines that are right up against sidewalks and you can't see around them and they don't look nice. And there are just different mistakes that have been made that I have seen as a realtor, both residential, commercial, and, I would hope that I could help make a difference and staying within the boundaries and the diversity and all the other aspects that they are looking for. And Mayor, thank you also. My neighbors were so pleased. It's amazing what just a conversation does. And I have to applaud you all. Thank you very much for those. I know Curtis Gardner also reached out, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, next we have Andrew Cusino Roberts.
Mayor, I just called Andrew because we're ahead of schedule. He will be logging in a few minutes, so it'll just take 2-3 minutes.
Okay, very well. Thank you.
All right, so I'm good. I'm off. All right, thank you all. Have a good evening.
Hello.
Andrew? Okay, thank you very much. Andrew, you will have 2 minutes to introduce yourself and say why you want to be in the commission. Then we'll open it up to questions, and each council member will have the opportunity to ask you a question, and you will then give 2-minute responses to those questions, and then I will recognize you at the end for 1-minute concluding remarks. Please go ahead with your 2-minute opening comments.
Absolutely. Thank you. It's a pleasure to meet all of you. My name's Andrew Roberts. I am a resident of Aurora. I live out in the South Shore, the Southlands area. I want to be a part of this Zoning and Planning Commission because I believe my ability, my experience working in project management requires attention to detail and requires the ability to ask questions and investigate. Additionally, I want to become more a part of the community, and I'm looking at ways to better help support the Aurora City. I believe zoning and planning is very important, and I understand that as I have gone through a few additions or renovations to my home, so understanding the zoning and planning really impacted those decisions. I want to ensure that the use of our land, which is one of our most precious resources, is fairly and equitably distributed to all Aurorans, not just those who have, the means or to be able to afford it. That's why I would like to join the board or the commission.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Bergen.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Andrew, for applying for the Planning and Zoning Commission. My question is, can you describe the criteria used by the Planning and Zoning Commission in its decision-making process?
Yes, from my investigation of the Zoning and Planning Commission, when I was looking into it, the rules and requirements that are used based on the zoning of the land and the eligibility requirements were to be used to determine whether or not a planning commission or a zoning or planning request is approved or not, and that it would then be, unless it was going to be appeal that would be passed without going to the city council. So I apologize. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, thank you so much.
Councilmember Coombs, your question.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Andrew, for being with us today. My question for you is, as a planning and zoning commissioner, how would you promote affordability in rental and for sale homes?
Absolutely. I believe that single family homes, while a traditional American staple, we need to better use the land so that way we have the ability to, housing prices are sky high. So the ability to provide people more choices, more capabilities than just a single family home are very important. So the idea of zoning and permitting to provide, the Aurorans the ability to make a choice, right? They're not forced to, choose a single family home. The ability to, provide, attached housing or multifamily dwellings would be very important to me.
Thank you. Councilmember Gruber.
Thank you for joining us, Andrew. Can you share your thoughts on how housing that sells for below market cost should be funded?
Yes, absolutely. So my house, I recently purchased it 2 years ago. That same home on the builder's facility or on the builder's website now starts at $70,000 higher than it was when I first purchased it, less than 2 years ago. And they've actually decreased the basement to a point where it's no longer a full basement. So the continued appreciation of housing prices, I don't believe is sustainable, because if it continues to this point, average people like myself would not be able to afford it. So when you say below market value, I think we need to be able to provide more availability, because there's obviously pent up demand, and we have limited developers or limited ability for developers to build at least fast enough or at a amount that makes sense. So the idea of did my house appreciate $70,000 in 2 years? That's a hard bargain to sell on my point. So, I don't believe the idea of continual appreciation of housing to a point where it's exorbitantly expensive is sustainable, and nor do I think it's good for the Aurora people.
Thank you.
Thank you. See, Councilmember Hiltz.
Thank you. Thank you for being here today. My question is either really simple or really complicated, so I'll let you decide which one that is. And that is, what is the biggest planning issue or problem that you see in the city today?
The biggest planning issue? The ability to provide access to the resources to the most individuals that need it. To the people who most need those resources, the ability to provide them access to them. So I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Andrew, for being here today and for applying for this position. I wanted to get your opinion, if you could give me an example of a well-planned project in the city of Aurora, and in your opinion, what makes a well-planned project?
Yeah, a well-planned project. Well, they did just break ground on the new recreational center near my house. From what I've seen, they've the ability to identify the funding ahead of time. So that way it would not increase taxes, nor would it put an increased burden on the nearby facility. I would say that's a great project that was able to be identified and is in progress of implementing, with the ability to provide input from the community and the ability to meet the needs of the local of the local people.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Councilmember Lawson.
Hi, Andrew. Thank you for applying for the Planning Commission. My question to you is, in your perspective, describe where the city should be in 10 years.
Absolutely. I see Aurora as a very up and coming community. I see us having greater access to to not only the essential resources that the city needs, such as housing, but the ability for the city of Aurora to kind of be at the forefront of ideas of energy creation and also business using green or new energy resources to help power the city.
Councilmember Marcano.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Andrew, for joining us this evening. I have a question for you here. What factors would you consider when an applicant requests a waiver for their project?
Absolutely. Well, the local community, how are they going to be impacted are items that going to be taken into account. How much value or usage is this going to bring to the surrounding community? Is there going to be an increased burden on the local community? Is there going to be, new benefits that are brought to the local community? So I think a lot of the questions or issues are concerning the locals, the people who are going to be most impacted by that waiver.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Murillo.
Thanks, Mayor. Thank you, Andrew, for your time. Can you tell me how do you or will you infuse equity in your decision-making process on the commission?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, equity doesn't just mean equal, right? The idea of we need to ensure that those who are, least advantaged are able to be brought up and able to have just as many opportunities as those who are, well or are above means. So taking into account the disadvantages that might be provided, or the opportunity might be bringing, or the person might be bringing. So considering the past, what they previously went through, I think is a big way to ensure that equity is part of the decision-making process.
Well, Andrew, thank you so much for applying for the Planning and Zoning Commission. You now have 1 minute for concluding remarks.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you all for, being on this meeting and joining me. I really look forward to working with the Zoning and Planning Commission. I want to bring kind of this idea of a more equitable and a more progressively, friendly Aurora to the future. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you for applying. The time is now 5:43. Council will stand in recess until 5:48.
Thank you.
I'll be here with you all night. My mind, I'm getting lost in your eyes. I'm broken when you're not around. Unspoken words I'm screaming out. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Now, can you hear me now? 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 Hold tight, I'll be here with you all night. My mind, I'm getting lost in your eyes. I'm broken when you're not around. Unspoken words I'm screaming out. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Now,
The study session of the Aurora City Council for Monday, April 5th, 2021 is called back to order. Consent calendar, item number 3A to 3F. Is there any objection to moving the consent calendar forward? Seeing none, the consent calendar will move forward. Item number 4, Asian American Pacific Islander hate crimes. Councilmember Allison Hills.
Thank you. Sorry, I was came in a bit late. This is really just for us, I think, as council to get more information about what is happening in our city right now. I know a lot of what's happening isn't reported through traditional city mechanisms, and Councilmember Murillo sponsored, I believe, while I was on maternity leave last year, a resolution condemning the hate that we're still seeing now. And I believe council approved that, I think, in April of last year. So correct me if I'm wrong on that for my colleague. But with everything that's still happening, I wanted to get information so that we could, as a council, determine some tangible, actionable steps, whether that's through financial resources, what we have to say via resolution or ordinance, but really just explore options on how to support the community, but really get that feedback from the community and how we can move forward with that. So thank you for having time on this agenda for
that. Claudia McDonald, Manager of Police Community Relations.
Thank you, Mayor Kaufman and City Council members. I will pitch this over to Chief Wilson, who will get this started with some background data. And then we do have community members who are the majority of our presenters on this evening. Thank you.
Thanks, Claudine. Do you mind go ahead and starting the PowerPoint we'll be sharing with council?
Absolutely. Ms. Rodriguez, if you could give me permission, so I will share that screen.
Okay, so I know quite a few of the council members have been involved, as well as the mayor, in the last two, the Aurora Pacific Development Center evening community talk, as well as the Korean community talk that we had just last week. And so a lot of this information may be repeating for you, but I just wanted to point out for the community members that are on and possibly listening, in 2020, we had 3 documented what we call bias-motivated crimes in Aurora. And you can see that 2 were reported against Asian Americans. Someone felt that someone intentionally left nails for her to run over to damage her tires. No suspect was identified in that. And then there was also an assault and racial slurs at a bus station, and the suspect was not identified. So 2021, unfortunately, we're only in April. If we can, next slide. We have 4 reported at this point. None of these have been indicated towards the Asian Pacific Islander community, but they're still alarming even so, that we have any sort of hate or bias going on within the city of Aurora due to someone's race, identified race, or perceived race, or gender, all the other, sexual orientation, all of the above that we falls into this bias motivated crimes. The most recent was very concerning, but we, as the police department, went out immediately. There was a phone call left at the Colorado Muslim Community Center saying that they were going to flip cars over, and they were blaming the deaths in Boulder against that community. So we had our Muslim liaison officer reach out and go to the mosques and talk about what we could do, and then we increased patrols. But as you can see here, these are the different cases that were reported in 2021. This is something we're keeping an eye on. I think the fact that there are no AAPI in this list, it's still very concerning, because from what I've heard from the community, and I think what a lot of council members have heard, is it's very underreported. So we're really trying to push that reporting piece, and I know we're going to cover that here in our presentation this evening. but my time is up. This is supposed to be about the community, so I'm going to be quiet at this point. So thank you.
Next is Ms. Fran Campbell.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to present to you today. My name is Fran Campbell, and I am with the Asian Chamber of Commerce. And I was asked to speak a little about the historical discrimination that our community has been experiencing. And boy, this is a long history, but I'm going to make it within 3 minutes. We, of course, start with the history of our Asian American community starts with the Chinese men who first came to America in the 1800s. They were hired as laborers on the Transcontinental Railroad, and they were treated very harshly, laboring over 18 hours a day with poor food and little pay, and set to the most dangerous work, which was setting explosives for excavation. These men came after the Transcontinental Railroad was completed. They came to the Denver metro area and to work in the silver and tin mines in Colorado. They had a designated Chinatown settlement in Denver. Not a lot of people know this, but it's near where Coors Stadium stands today. They had markets, suppliers, barbers, restaurants, their homes, laundries, and butchers. But nationwide anti-Chinese hate began with the false assumption that these Chinese families were taking jobs away from the white population, that they were pests from the Pacific, and that they were the yellow peril. And on Halloween 1880, the riots started with a bar fight that spread to the alley, and by morning, one Chinese man was killed, and all the businesses, homes, and temples were burned to the ground. And this was the first of several anti-Chinese riots across the country. And by 1882, of course, the nationwide hate and bias led to the Chinese Exclusion Act, which prohibited immigration from China. It was the first and only federal legislation to explicitly suspend immigration for a specific nationality. The other most significant in our community, of course, is the Japanese internment. Executive Order 9066, signed 2 months after Pearl Harbor, forced Japanese Americans into internment camps. Without due process, the interred Japanese Americans were forced to leave their homes, communities, and businesses with little more than a suitcase of their belongings. They were rounded up and tagged, and these Americans were sent to military-style compounds, including one here in Colorado, with little plumbing, cooking facilities, or heat. Over 120,000 Japanese Americans were interned. Even while the Japanese American soldiers serving in the 100th and 442nd Regiments during World War II became the one most decorated in military history. After the Chinese Exclusion Act, the United States turned to the Philippines for a new source of cheap labor. From the 1920s through the 1940s, Filipino laborers experienced grueling working conditions, beatings, anti-Filipino riots, and even tar and feathering. This led a lot of Filipinos to come to Colorado. However, Filipino soldiers who fought heroically alongside Americans in World War II in the Pacific arena, they were still denied military benefits and promotions, and these soldiers were not recognized until 2 years ago here in Denver. The South Asian community, which of course includes our Indian, Bhutan, Nepalese, Bangladesh, Pakistani, and Sri Lankan. Of course, post 9/11, the Indian Muslims and Sikhs are severely targeted with religious and racial profiling and violence. And just like we heard just now, they still are. A mass shooting at a Sikh temple in Wisconsin in 2012 left 7 dead. And in April 2020, just a year ago, a Sikh liquor store owner was run over by a driver who had entered his store, started knocking inventory off the shelves, and shouting racial epithets. The store owner was so seriously injured that the case was prosecuted for a hate crime. This liquor store is in Lakewood, just a few blocks from my home. The dangerous assumptions of the model minority myth creates a baseless social divide between Asians and other ethnic communities, and it's perpetuated by political authority figures. This was evident even back in the early 1990s during the LA riots, which saw over 1,700 reported Korean businesses damaged and destroyed due to the falseness of the model minority myth. And then, of course, the brutal and tragic killings of 6 Korean women in Atlanta. This is truly the heartbreak of all Asian Americans. So for centuries, for generations, the Asian American community has had to suffer a long list of discrimination that includes not only these previous items I mentioned, but also anti-miscegenation, discriminatory lending and home buying, fetishism of Asian women, which probably led to the killings in Atlanta, bullying, and a lifetime of microaggression and stereotypes. We're scared for our Chinese elders in the Bay Area in California, our Filipino aunties in New York, our Vietnamese restaurant in Lakewood, who had their store vandalized 4 times, our young Korean mothers who are spit on when they go to King Soopers, and our favorite restaurants in Aurora that have been villainized in Yelp and social media. And today, the anti-Asian bias and violence caused by false rhetoric touches all of us of Asian descent, whether we're new immigrants or 5th or 6th generation. But we're resilient and determined, and we're not going anywhere. Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity.
Next, we have Mr. Harry Budisidi Harta.
Good evening, City Council members. My name is Harry Budisidarta. I am the Executive Director of Asian Pacific Development Center, which is a local nonprofit in Aurora that serves the AAPI community. And following up on what Mrs. Campbell just presented to all of you, one of the reasons why our community is seeing an increase in hate crimes is because of the perception that we are foreigners and that we do not belong here. A lot of people are not aware about the long and rich history of the Asian community in the U.S. They are also not aware of the contributions that we have made to the U.S. Therefore, one of our long-term policy projects is that we are working with various stakeholders and community organizations to see what we can do to make sure that the history of our community and the history of other communities of color are being taught at our local school, particularly at the middle school and the high school level. This is still a very early project right now. We are still conducting our due diligence and meeting with various stakeholders. So I do not have a lot of update to give to you, but once we have conducted our due diligence and research and come up with a practical steps, then we will come back to you and ask for your support. So that is it for now.
Mr. Peter Lee.
Yeah, my name is Peter Lee. I'm currently serving as a co-chair of Aurora Asian Pacific Community Partnership. AAPCP was formed back in 1991 to create and maintain high quality of life for all Asian Pacific American residents and businesses in Aurora. I'd like to thank the City Council members for asking our voice to be heard, especially the times like this where Asian Americans are targeted for hate crimes. We Asian American and Pacific Islander condemns this unacceptable behavior and killing, and then saddened by the tragic killings in Atlanta less than 3 weeks ago. They were shooting. My daughter, who lives in New York City, called my wife, calling my wife not to go to massage shop where my enjoys going time to time in Aurora. We shocked at 8 lives lost and found 4 of them are like my wife, Korean American middle-aged woman. Last week in Manhattan, 65-year-old Asian woman was kicked, punched, and knocked down on the street by the criminal while bystanders were just watching. We must not hate, but condemn the crime. We must be a part of the solution. I've been told that there is not enough statistics to address the hate crimes against AAPI community in the city or the state. The 21-year-old killer who may be being reprimanded early on in his life to be taught and taking corrective actions against the unacceptable behaviors by someone along his life made him understand this tragedy may not happen. There are many ideas currently being discussed and being implemented in our community since COVID-19 pandemic. Providing the safety kit that include high-pitched whistles and pepper sprays are happening already. Many mental health professionals are supporting the community with the needs. Several rallies has been coordinated and being continued on. Every AAPI members are asked to speak up about the hate crimes in their workplaces. we are worrying about our children as they are growing up with this hate crime from the school. Our school system needs to address this. We do not want to raise a monster like in Atlanta we saw 3 weeks ago. As I was asked to provide you on how AAPI local leaders are encouraging our communities to report the crime. Many English-speaking members are providing resources to our community, and reportings are happening right now. But there's no English-speaking reporting system in place other than phone numbers to get the language interpreter, which is very hard for the non-English-speaking persons to start the process. It is for our elders and new immigrants who need it the most. We need a solution for 1, 2, or 3 or more languages we spoke in our city to report the crime. We need to know when to report the crime, let alone to know what the hate crimes are. We are creating the campaigning educational seminar where we need your help. We would like to see how AAPI community and the city and the state can work together to fight back and mostly educate and prepare ourselves to stop this. AAPI community is raising funds to fight back. We, Aurora Asian Pacific Community Partnership, is setting aside for $30,000 to provide hate crime education on how to identify, react, and report the crime so that they become the statistics to manage, but also teach the perpetrators to stop early on. The funds will be utilized to teach through the non-English news medias and training the trainers to go out to the community. We must find a way to stop this and guide us and help us to be an active member of our society and keeping the safety for all. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to bring up my slide. I hope everybody could see that, and going to share my portion of this presentation on this evening. And hello again, my name is Claudine McDonald. I'm the Chief Community Relations Officer within the Aurora Police Department. And I've been asked to cover 2 different portions on 2 different topics on this evening. The first is what the Aurora Police Department has been doing as it relates to diversity, equity, and inclusion training. And then second, discuss what can be done in response to a couple of community requests that we've received at the presentations that Chief Wilson was talking about in relations to a buddy system for some of our vulnerable populations, and at this time, specifically the Asian American and Pacific Islander population. So I'm going to just jump right in real quickly. In Chief Wilson's A New Way plan, she outlines a new way of service, specifically stating implicit and unconscious bias and cultural competency training will be implemented. So I'm pleased to say that the implicit bias training was completed for sworn staff at the beginning of this year. And I started a new module of DEI training today. I started with our command staff first, and the training will be rolled out to all of our staff very soon. And now moving on to developing a buddy system for Aurora. This is, like I said, been a topic that has come up a couple of times in the past couple of events that we participated in. So I'm going to talk kind of at a high level, and then we'll save room for question and answer. So here's the 3 components of it: community education, business education, and community-based organization partnership. So the first portion is to educate the community. And some of this is really just a reiteration, as you can see from our community leaders, on basic communication on what is a bias crime, what to do in the event of a bias crime. Even if someone may think that it is a relatively small or a minimal event, we still want to know about it. Perhaps offer a self-defense class in our community, out on our Great Lawn, or at some of our rec centers. And then let's say someone does attend one of those classes. I think this was also brought up. Let's give them some type of noise attractor, like a whistle, and say something's happening. They could blow the whistle, and it attracts people to them to say, I need help. We're able to disseminate some information about community resources. And then last but surely not least, communicate our newly appointed AAPI liaison, Officer Stephanie Nim. So be able to share that information out with our community. And moving on to the second section is really to point out educating our local businesses. How can they be safer? We have trained officers within the Aurora Police Department on crime prevention through environmental design, or CEPTED, which looks at the actual design of buildings and parking lots, lighting, any barriers, and basically scores their safety and gives feedback to the owner of the building on ways to make them safer. So there's a lot more that goes into this. Obviously, I'm really just giving a high level but maybe ask those businesses, so that's one portion. But then maybe also ask those businesses or those churches or grocery stores to offer some type of escort service for their patrons to take them from their parking space within their parking lot into their place of business. So that would be another level of safety. And then I put this up here so you can see this image here. So this is a program that's offered for anti-LGBTQ crimes, an anti-LGBTQ crimes program. These are markers that businesses can place in their windows to basically say that they will not tolerate these types of crimes in their business. We could create something very similar for businesses within the city of Aurora, specific for AAPI or multicultural types of crime prevention as well. And then lastly, looking to partner with our community and created an actual buddy system that has been discussed at other community events, where our partners would be able to recruit the volunteers from the community. And I understand this is an Asian American Pacific Islander conversation on tonight, and no one appreciates that more than me since my family is from the island of Guam. However, I think this can be a very multicultural approach during planning. Perhaps use even some of our natural helpers program that we have with our Office of International Immigrant Affairs. I think that would be a very natural approach to how we could launch this out. This would be something that would be community-led, however, city-supported. And that concludes my portion, and I'm going to turn it over to Ricardo now.
Thank you, Claudine. Ricardo Gambera with the Office of International and Immigrant Affairs. We have been listening to the community for the last several weeks, and actually last weekend we have the chance to host one of the community panel presentations. We have the chiefs, the mayor, several members of the city council. So I want to invite another member of our team, Minsu Song. She's going to share very quickly in 30 seconds some updates and feedback coming from the Asian community. Minsu?
Hello, I'm Minsu Song with City of Aurora's Office of International and Immigrant Affairs. Mayor and council members, I would like to share some of the feedback from community conversation. First of all, local AAPI community is really grateful for this open communication channel with Aurora Police Department and city's leadership. One of the requests from the community is to establish hotline to report bias crime, maybe 3-digit number or catchy numbers with interpretation services. And also there is a great need for educational material for business and their employees, since many of these bias crimes has been happening in the local business area.
Thank you, Minsu. So in addition to all the different things that APD has been working the last several weeks, our team, working together with APD, Claudine's team, and also Communication, Channel 8, and many others, we came with a special idea. After listening to the community, we want to launch a public awareness campaign on Channel 8 and also in social media. And on phase 1, we want to highlight the diversity of our city. So let me show you right now a very short video. It's a PSA that we're going to start, showing everyone on Channel 8 in the next few days. I apologize in advance if we have some technical issues, but I think everything will be fine. Let's try. beautiful video. So thanks again to Channel 8 and our communication team for putting this together in less than a week. So I guess this is the time for questions and comments. Thank you.
Questions from members of council.
Mayor, Councilmember Hiltz.
Councilmember Hill.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank everyone for taking the time to do this presentation. I know there were a couple of different community meetings, but have this direct conversation with council. And you probably won't have the answer to this now, but if you had funding to help support a larger campaign to implement some of these programs, or if this hotline would be citywide or statewide, how can we support that and make sure that we're providing what best works for the community? I know there's a national reporting mechanism that has been widely advertised and is collecting a lot of this data, but the recommendations that they have might not be specifically as helpful to Aurora as it might be in other cities. So just learning more about how we can specifically help here in this community and what that funding would look like. I know that Third Culture Bakery did a fundraiser that Councilmember Murillo brought up at the last meeting as well, and that's still going on for the safety and alarm kits and some other programming. But just, I know this will be a larger conversation independent of just this specific presentation, but just want to make sure that, at least on my behalf, that, please don't hesitate to ask for funding for supporting local organizations that are doing this work directly, because we do have the ability to help with that, and we do have a supplemental budget coming up. So now is a time to have that conversation as well. Thank you.
Mayor.
Councilmember Moreno.
Thank you. I'm really glad to see that we're having this conversation as the sponsor of the resolution this last year. I'm a little surprised that I wasn't aware of any of these conversations until I guess, the publishment of these conversations, because I would have loved to share some of the conversations that I have had with some of our AAPI community members. I mentioned last time the request on behalf of one of our small business owners that is an Asian-owned business to help support some of these safety alarm kits. We've also gotten direct asks from community to engage in potential training, self-defense classes. And so I have active requests to our chief and police department on kind of some of that funding, what that could look like. So I would have loved to have incorporated that into the conversation. I love that we are expanding that conversation so it's a full council kind of conversation and we can be more coordinated across departments. I think that is a wonderful strength of including all of our city departments in this. So though I think I would love to hear if there's any specific budget requests. If that doesn't happen today, as we move forward, I think we would all like to know that. In the meantime, though, I'm going to continue with those particular requests. I just want to make that aware, not sidestepping any process, just wasn't included in the process and have been working directly with community groups. Those are the things that I've heard. I don't want to wait, basically. I don't want to wait to have 20 conversations when we know that community is asking for specific things now. So I've been, clear on what people have asked for, but I would love to, I guess, have that as a starting point and use this conversation to kind of continue the conversation and when it comes to funding and systemic support from the city. So I just wanted to kind of just make that clear so that when that comes up in the next meeting, it's not that, I'm no sidestepping. I'm glad that we're going through this process. It's just, I wasn't part of it and have already been actively investigating. So if there's any questions there, happy to address at the time, but this is not about any one council member. So just wanted to make that clear if that was opposition moving forward.
Chief Wilson, I wonder if you could mention what you said in a meeting that I was with you at in the Asian community, I think a couple of Fridays ago, where you talked about stepped up patrols of Asian businesses, of Asian churches and organizations.
Chief, you're
Ocean
muted.
Marketplace today. And we're meeting with them on Friday, and we're doing patrols along the AAPI businesses that we have within our city. And then, of course, working with, my goodness, I can't think tonight, the the Asian Pacific Development Center, sorry. We've been working with them as well to be there for vaccinations and anything we can do. But, you know, I don't have the funding number, and Councilman Murillo, I really appreciate you calling and working on the safety alarms and the self-defense, and we're already moving towards those conversations. So I hope we can get this up and running in the next couple months. You know, obviously with COVID restrictions, we'll have to see when masks and stuff are lifted, but I think we can work on this now. I think the time is now. And, you know, anybody that wants to meet with me or my people, we're more than happy to come out and do, like I said, the crime prevention through environmental design to make sure that the business is something that when officers drive by, they can see into, and that it's well lit for people that are leaving the business or actually trying to enter the business and aren't, you know, ambushed by someone that is just trying to hurt them due to the fact that they're AAPI.
Other questions?
Mayor.
Councilmember Coombs, and then Councilmember Gruber.
Well, Councilmember Lawson also spoke at the same time, so.
Well, okay, Councilmember Coombs, Councilmember Gruber, Councilmember Lawson. Joe.
Okay, great, thank you. So on the point that Harry and Fran had talked about with respect to just the public education, I think that a PSA is a great start, but I would want to understand what type of more comprehensive education we can do about just those facts about the role of people in our communities in kind of a deeper sense. And then also at one of the events, I had mentioned bystander intervention training. So that is the idea that those of us that are not AAPI, that are in the community, can learn skills and tools to, if we see something happening or something escalating, that we can also intervene and support members of our community. And so that's something else that I wonder if we can look at. And then also on the point of the PSA, not to nitpick, but just the One Aurora slogan has been a slogan of specific individuals' past and current political campaigns. And so I'm not sure that we should use a slogan that's a slogan of people's political campaigns. That also, rather unfortunately, was the name of an independent expenditure committee that sent out attack ads on council members. And so in all of those senses, I would recommend that we perhaps look at something else other than that. But otherwise, I think it's a really wonderful program to have that PSA out in public.
Councilmember Gruber.
This is obviously important to me, as is any hatred against any group. You might know that my wife is Japanese American. Obviously, half my family is, and then my children are half Asian as well. What bothered me, the New York case where the man hit the woman, knocked her down, and he was arrested. The part of that, it was absolutely astounding to see someone do that. And I've seen similar videos in San Francisco, other ones in New York, and other cities as well, where a person walks up behind an Asian man or a woman, generally elderly, and punches them. But what particularly bothered me with the New York incident was the fact that people watched and people didn't intervene and people didn't call. I mean, even if they didn't, purposely step in to try to stop, they didn't call the police. So as we continue the education on this, somehow or another, we need to let people know that not only is it not okay to hate Asians or to show hate for any group, but if you do see it, to call the police and to notify. It's not okay to simply watch and do nothing. So if we can include, I guess, Claudine, I'm talking to you or asking you to include that message as we go forward, that if you see something like this, hatred towards any group, to call the police and to become involved. Don't simply step back and act like it never happened. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Gruber. I think what we, in our discussions in regards to the PSA campaign, we did really talk about two different tracks. One track would be, and this was just a sample that you saw on this evening, one track of the PSA campaign would really focus on encouraging our community, our AAPI community, to report crimes, because we've obviously heard that that has been an issue for a multitude of reasons. So one, we want our community to report crimes. The other portion of this, which is why you saw diversity in the video, is that we want to ensure, and this also hits to Councilmember Coombs' point, is that we want to also demonstrate how to be an ally to our community, and that it's not okay to just be a bystander, that we want you to also understand that it is your responsibility to report bias crimes when you see them as well. So that is definitely a component of this campaign as well. And then in the communication that we are able to send out to, once we're able to do some education to our community, we'll be able to include that information as well.
Thank you.
Good point. Thank you.
Councilmember Lawson.
I know that you brought up the issue that there's going to be some campaign towards youth. I really think that's really essential. If there's some kind of PSA that could be done with our youth on this issue, because it happens at all ages, and I think it's really important. So I just wanted to know, is there going to be an extenuation of this campaign? I would even like to see a PSA with just youth as well, in that particular, addressing this issue as well. So is there going to be an extension of the campaign to go into our schools to reach out to, our youth in the community as well?
So I don't think there's a limit on, now that our council is talking about budget requests, I don't think there's a limit as far as where that goes to. But I don't think there's a limit as far as the ideas, where the ideas could take us to. But I absolutely agree with you, Councilmember Lawson, that our youth are integral into the message, because we do see bias crimes hitting at various levels and in different situations, in schools, in churches, in our community, in different businesses. So we definitely see it there. And I could let Mr. Budisidi Harda talk to this in what his ideas were about taking the education into the school systems. But as far as the PSA campaign, we could absolutely create some form of the PSA campaign. Again, they're not all created. This was just a sample that we wanted to share, but that could be a portion of what we create.
Well, I also think when you're asking for budgetary, amounts, you should actually make sure that the youth are included in that as well. So it could be a well-rounded campaign.
Absolutely.
Mayor.
Other questions, Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes, and I definitely, applaud the efforts to do whatever we can do to prevent any kind of hate crimes. On the youth, I think that's a really good idea as well. Just wondering, are we going to be partnering with Cherry Creek School District and APS, because they probably could have some resources to do some of the PSAs as well, and ours, we could probably coordinate with them.
Absolutely, Councilmember Bergen. I mean, we're still in the early stage. We're still talking to various stakeholders, but we certainly welcome any partnership with Cherry Creek, APS, and any other school districts.
Yep. Mayor.
Councilmember McConnell.
Thank you. Councilmember Bergen basically said most of what I wanted to say. I think we definitely need to partner with Creek and APS here. I think that we could also potentially involve Aurora sister cities in this effort. And I think it ties into what Councilmember Lawson suggested, kind of targeting youth with a cultural competency and cultural awareness kind of supplemental education. And I just really want to highlight Fran Campbell for giving us that history, because I think that history is important and it's powerful. And I think combating this kind of hatred needs to have that history basically taught in a non-whitewashed fashion so that folks understand it, so that they understand the contributions of all of the communities that make up our country and our city, so that this is basically becomes an unacceptable kind of mentality to have, I think. So thank you so much for sharing that history with us. I appreciate it.
Mayor.
Further questions? Councilmember Maria? Further questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for the presentation. Community Police Task Force, Council Member Johnston.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to make sure I'm going to introduce this, but that Dr. Ryan Ross, who is our facilitator for the meeting, that he is also on the call just in case there's any IT that we need to do to get him as a participant.
Ryan is available, and there he is right there. So I don't know if his audio is working, but he can. Yep. Okay.
Okay. Great. I will begin, but I just wanted to make sure that that Dr. Ross was on. Thank you, Katie. Mayor, is it okay if I begin then?
Please proceed.
Thank you. So I just wanted to give a little introduction. We will be giving information on the recommendations today. There's not a vote tonight. It's for informational purposes, but just wanted to tee it off of where we were and where we're going. Of course, this has been in the works for quite some time, as some of the council members who were on the council in 19 before our new folks got sworn in. We had a series of community meetings as a result of different community members coming to council meetings during public comment to be heard, but really wanted a better forum and a conversation to discuss police reform, public safety issues. And from that, I had been talking probably for a year or so before that with then Chief Metz, city manager, on what an independent oversight system would look like. And as I was diving in to the different models around the country, I knew that we needed to have some sort of community feedback, recommendations on what this accountability and more transparency could look like. We ended up having a community police task force resolution, which is in the backup. I believe it starts on page 80. And we had a specific scope to that resolution. And the charge of that was to come up with recommendations, community members on this police reform task force, to come up with recommendations on improving effective and transparent communication between APD and the community. So that was one part of the recommendations. And then the other was to have community members come up with a review system, an independent review system on critical incidents and police operations, police practices, and make recommendations on how that independent oversight system would look like. So we ended up, fast forward to February of 2020, we did get support from all of council to have this task force. We ended up appointing members. In the backup has the different representation of different community members, we had the school districts, we had NAACP, we had some folks with legal background, and we had some people who were in law enforcement. We did not have formal union representation on the task force, but we did have a police officer, Virgil Majors, who served as a very valuable liaison to answer some questions about what APD might be doing. We also, part of the charge was having representation from all of the wards. In full transparency, you can see the members in the backup who were appointed to the task force. Not all continued to the end, but the majority did, but you can see those folks in there. And then we had a series of meetings starting this summer. We met twice a month. We went through different overviews of city systems, operations. Obviously, COVID and the pandemic impacted our original vision of being able to get together and do different systems that way, but we still made it happen virtually. And Dr. Ross did a great job of having the facilitation for that, the agenda. We had that all virtually. I had council members attend meetings, and I really appreciated them getting that perspective. And then we had to wrap this up. The original charge was to have it wrapped up by December, but because we started a little later, we actually just wrapped it up last month. a few weeks ago with these recommendations. In the meantime, a lot happened from our original charge of having this task force. This was before George Floyd. This was before the social unrest, before 21CP, the independent investigation with Jonathan Smith. A lot had happened. The good thing with us starting this process is we were able to address a lot of these issues because they were on the forefront of our minds, on both us as all of us as council members, city management, police department, and the community. But there isn't, and I've said this, well, there's not one end all be all solution. We've had council members work on different systems and reforms. We've had the city manager did announce an independent monitor after the Elijah McClain independent investigation came out, and Jonathan Smith did recommend that that was an effective use of independent oversight. But we still have some really great recommendations that we can take and use and come up at the end of the day with a transparent, accountable system. I do want to say we do have Kim Skaggs, who's the city attorney, who did attend the meetings. You will notice in the recommendations, there are some that are systems that are already in place, but they're still recommendation. We've captured it all. There's systems that would require a charter change, but we captured it all. There's some that might be out of the scope, but we just felt like it was important to hear from our community and write this down and present it to council. So I do have Dr. Ross today will take us through these recommendations, and then we can answer questions after that, if that's okay, Mayor.
Please proceed. That's acceptable.
Thank you. Dr. Ross?
Great. Good evening, everyone. Hope everyone is well, healthy, and safe. Do I have the ability to share my screen? If not, that's okay. I can just talk, but
Ryan, yes, I can make you a presenter right now.
okay. Okay. Can everybody see my screen okay? All right, perfect. Again, thank you for being here, and just wanted to take a quick moment to just say thank you to everyone who's been involved in this process. Thank you to City Council for the resolution and the opportunity to engage in this work. I want to give a special thanks to the members of the task force who've given up so much time over the last year, and for some folks since December of 29 and even earlier, thinking about this work, participating in the process, and just being present in this work. Tonight, you guys have the recommendations. I will give a brief overview and take any questions. I'll hit the highlights, if you will. And before doing that, just wanted to share a couple observations from the task force. First, I just wanted to say it was really great working with this group of folks. It was a diverse group of folks from all across the city with differing views, differing backgrounds. And, in my experience in the past, sometimes these kinds of task force fail to get started because folks can't put the ultimate objective out front and in front of their own interest. And it was just really inspiring, honestly, to work with a group of folks who were able to do that. I thought they did a really good job having some really challenging conversations, some complex thoughts and feelings, being able to come together as a group and do this work. We had to have some check-ins off, outside of meeting times just to make sure people were good and whole and okay. But ultimately, a really great experience. And I just want to, again, give kudos to the task force members for what they've done. The task force members also wanted to just really let City Council know that they want these they want these recommendations to be more than just recommendations that get read over. They're hoping that these will be reviewed and accepted, and they're also hoping to continue to engage around the recommendations. So once they're reviewed and decisions are made, the task force members would love to have dialogue around, why things were accepted or why they weren't, or how they might further be able to be involved. It's a really good group of folks who want to stay engaged in the work, and I think that's a plus for the city of Aurora to have some folks who are engaged in this work and want to continue down this line. The other piece is I think that the other piece is the task force wanted to let the council know that their recommendations, they feel like, are the beginning of this work, and that additional things need to happen. They had a pretty specific scope to look at, and so as some other things came up, they made note of them, but wanted to be sure that folks understood that these recommendations are the start of work that can move the city forward, and not what they believe to be the final solutions. And I've said it already, but also there are several task force members who would love to continue to engage and continue to be involved. And so wherever this work moves from here, there are citizens of Aurora who really want to engage in this work and be a part of it. So what I'll briefly discuss over the next few minutes is a little bit of context and background. I won't spend a lot of time there since Representative Johnston did a great job of going through that. Share a little bit about the task force process. Review the recommendations. The recommendations were broke down as primary and secondary. Primary recommendations are the recommendations from the task force based on the resolution. Secondary recommendations were things that after being able to talk with Chief Wilson, and Chief Wilson saying, hey, would love your feedback, some items that were proposed for Chief Wilson. And then lastly, I'll finish with just some things that the task force, are just items of concern. So the charge and all that was reviewed, so I'll just jump right into the process. And so from the point of task force selection, the task force members went through assessment and education. They had an opportunity to participate and hear almost close to 16 to 18 different modules about the Aurora Police Department, everything from the excessive force policy, current legislation, some of the current changes being enacted by Chief Wilson, substance abuse policy, discipline process, Civil Service Commission, body-worn cameras, suspicious calls, officer release process, and even had the opportunity to participate in ride-alongs to further just get a feel for what's going on and understand the engagement of the Aurora Police Department. And so that was the assessment, education, and development of the task force. There were more kind of education opportunities that are listed in the recommendations. From there, we then went into work sessions. And so each month we met the second and fourth Tuesday. With the exception of November, we also had a November Saturday work day where the task force came together from about 9 to 3:30 or 4 to work through all of this. Throughout each conversation, each sections, we had a Microsoft Teams shell where all the presentations and questions and notes and all those things were kept so people could look at those things in real time and comment and share thoughts that later led into the development of draft recommendations. Once we got to draft recommendations, came back, had a further review, checked in with legal, and just want to say thank you to the City of Aurora staff who helped staff these things, to the attorneys who provided information and additional insight. All of that led into the final recommendations that you have from the task force. So the first primary recommendation was the creation of a Citizens Oversight Office. The task force called this office, they called it OPAT, which stands for the Office of Police Accountability, Transparency, and Transformation. They're looking for this to actually be an organization within the city and not just an individual person. They're looking for, broadly speaking here, they're looking for investigatory and subpoena powers to be able to review citizen complaints, participate in investigations of critical incidents, and then also participate in the assessment of Aurora Police Department policies and practice. In order to do this, there needs to be a budget. The task force was really particular about ensuring that this work happened by individuals who are citizens of Aurora. They want it to be, they want the OPAT office not to simply be an advisory committee or a recommendation body, but an actual working body with authority. They want the office and anything that's created with it, like a commission or anything, to be diverse and reflect the diverse makeup of Aurora. They want to be sure that it doesn't include any active members of law enforcement. That was a really big part of the conversation. And so active members, they would feel like wouldn't be a part of this. And then also want to have the ability to look at decisions and open investigations where there are challenges or grave concern. The second set of recommendations really focused on the improvement of trust and communication with the department. The conversation there really centered around accountability of officers. And so, the task force really spending time and emphasizing the officers needing to be held accountable to the degree that they have been disciplined for abuse of power, wrongdoing, or any conviction. They discussed mental health in various capacities. And so mental health services that focus on the Aurora Police Department, focusing on protecting and serving, i.e. being peace officers, as the definition is as a part of POST, versus simply enforcing penalties. Looking for officers to have the ability to have regular third-party mental health screening to certify mental wellness and also prevent development of mental illness. And some of those examples in the conversation were burnout, PTSD, depression, and anxiety. There's, within the recommendations to fully develop the co-responder program, pairing officers with mental health professionals in response to incidents, community involvement in the hiring police officers, looking at implementing an equity lens in the hiring practices, and doing using all legal capabilities to diversify the police academies. And then finally, they're looking at all policies and procedures for transparency and anti-racism. Then we went into the secondary recommendations, and these were really geared towards APD and Chief Wilson. And so the first recommendation there is related to recruitment, training, and education. And so there's a focus on increasing the amount of culturally relevant instruction and professional development for both the academy and current officers. The engagement of the community in any aspect of the Aurora Police Department that affects students and or citizens, looking at racial disparity training. Then they discussed substance abuse, and really there it's looking at no substance or drugs being introduced by APD to any contacted person unless it's to save a life. Then we talked about funds, reappropriating or providing funds, APD, to support youth-based initiatives that were operated by community members to encourage and really create partnerships. And then lastly, reviewing the procedure for dispatching police to reported incidents for safety. And there the conversation really centered around how many officers do you actually need to respond to an incident? Does the amount of officers increase the anxiety of people contacted? Does that escalate the situation already? How many officers need to be present for the officers to be safe? For the officers to be safe. So really just reviewing that and assessing that to determine what the best number is or what a best practice is to keep everyone safe and in incidents. In terms of just some additional things, points of concern. The major theme there was the lack of accountability that the community feels is present when it comes to police officers or those in law enforcement. They feel like that APD can be more vocal and question outcomes that lack equity or fairness. Even though, the DA is in charge of certain things, judges are in charge of certain things, but the police department can protect and serve its citizens by stepping up and voicing concern when they see justice not done in a particular situation. The task force really talked about trust, not improving at all until there's some real tangible accountability for criminal actions of police officers. They talked about more support for the chief needing more autonomy and control over hiring, firing, and discipline. The thought is that the city of Aurora should prioritize its citizens and explore charter change in this area to support the chief in being a CEO. Talked about incentive practices for referring officer candidates should be addressed. Looking at the current incentive process, the task force feels might be limiting diversity or either encouraging homogeneous repetitious behavior. The last piece here is looking at the police academy curriculum, including more de-escalation, mental health, cultural identity, and equity content in their curriculum within the Aurora Police Department and working with post and across the academy system to think about those aspects in how officers are trained. That is those are the major pieces of the recommendation. Sorry, the screen is jumping. The last thing that I'll share is also just being able to have a conversation about systemic and structural racism that the recommendations are really addressing. And so, in these 6 areas, hiring, training, discipline, use of force, the organizational structure, policies and procedures, the task force really thinks that a really critical, intentional look to see how these things support structural racism or systemic racism should be reviewed and addressed to make the experience better for our officers, and most importantly, make the experience and engagement with communities better, and so everybody in Aurora feels safe. I don't know how much time we have, so I wanted to just kind of give you a quick overview. You have the actual recommendations. I think that the task force would welcome the opportunity to engage with city council, the city manager, and others to talk about their recommendations. I know that's an interest of theirs, and that they're also very interested in really understanding what's going to happen with the recommendations after you review them, and really want some transparency and communication on the decisions that are made, because they put a lot of time into this work over the last year and want to be able to report back to the community kind of what happened and what people's thoughts were. So I will stop there.
Questions?
Mayor?
Councilmember Coombs.
So just to get us started, my question about the OPAT is, would that be substituting for the current Civil Service Commission? And if so, would we need to also have a charter change for that?
No, that would be a new organization or office that will work in collaboration with the civil service. The charter change that would most likely need to happen in that situation is authorizing the power for an office like OPAT to be able to work collectively and collaboratively with that of the Civil Service Commission.
Further questions?
Mayor?
Mayor Pro Tem Bergen.
Yes, can I ask the chair, Councilmember Johnston, if she knows, we only had one representative from Ward 6, and it looks like he did not stay for the majority of the time, left in August. So Councilmember Johnston, do you know why he left?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your question, because I did have some conversations with him. He announced that he was going to resign. I think he was on it for 2 or 3 meetings. And so some of this, you know, it's personal to him, but I think it's important to say because it was a priority for me to have all of the ward representation. He did not feel that he was in an environment where he could give views, and he felt that some of the members, in his opinion, would shoot down his perspective and be critical of that. That's what he shared with me. And you know, when he agreed to do this and signed up, it was before protests and everything that had happened. And with his profession, with his family, he just said, you know, I really can't continue this. I did say if he has any ideas or suggestions, just with his background, I'd like to hear that. But unfortunately, we did not have any Ward 6 representation after he left soon after.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that. Appreciate it.
Further questions? Further questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ross.
You're welcome.
Items from the Policy Committee, 6A, IGA between Buckley Air Force Base and the Aurora History Museum. Mr. Williams.
Hello, Mayor and City Council. My name is Liz Ricci. I will be covering for.
Okay.
So tonight we are asking Council and the Mayor to enter into an intergovernmental agreement with Buckley Air Force Base to curate a small collection of artifacts found at Buckley. We were contacted by Mr. Jeff Harrison at the Air and Cultural Resource Program Manager at Buckley Air Force Base to inquire if the museum would be able to store a small amount of archaeological objects that were discovered on Air Force property during surveys of the area. The collection consists of 0.2165 cubic feet of artifacts, the majority of which were stone arrowheads, petrified wood arrowheads, and small stone drills. These artifacts are currently stored at F.E. Warren Air Force Base in Cheyenne, Wyoming. The United States Air Force would like to have these artifacts come back to their place of contact for interpretation, display, and care. The Aurora History Museum is the closest approved state repository for archaeological collections management, and we meet the requirements needed by the United States Air Force for storage needs. Buckley Air Force Base has reached out to various tribes to lay claim to these artifacts. However, no tribe has come forward. The artifacts will be deemed property of the United States Air Force until claim is made. If claim is made, we will work with Buckley to have the artifacts returned to the tribe. The museum will charge a one-time fee of $100 for upkeep to the collection while it is in our care, which has been agreed to by Buckley Air Force Base. This fee is in line with other Colorado state approved repositories. And we are really honored and excited for the opportunity to interpret, display, and care for these artifacts. Any questions or comments?
Questions?
Mayor?
Councilmember Coombs.
I just wanted to comment and thank Liz and the museum. I think that this is a really exciting opportunity. We had a great conversation about it in committee. I think it would be a great addition to the museum and also an opportunity for folks to potentially reclaim those artifacts when they're in a place that's displayed where they can access them.
Further comments? Seeing none, is there any objection to moving item number 6A forward? Seeing none, item number 6A will move forward. Item number 6B, resolution on redistricting. Councilmember Lawson.
Mayor, this particular resolution was brought forth by Jake Zambrano. He has been a resident of Aurora for over 20 plus years. In full disclosure, I do want to say that Jake Zambrano is a lobbyist. However, he did not provide this resolution from any of his clients. He basically has, as a resident, is concerned about what's going to be happening with the redistricting process. So he brought this to committee. It has went through several different iterations. There was some comments from the committee chairs, committee members, to add a couple things into the resolution. I hope one of the things, these meetings are happening now. Aurora is the third largest city in Colorado. And again, what this resolution, and it actually is in the summary, is to keep Aurora in a single congressional district, consolidate the number of state and Senate and state representative districts within city boundaries, and not divide communities and neighborhoods between the districts. This resolution was sent to our Aurora delegation. So we did get responses from some of the delegation. Of course, the delegation is in session, but we did get some responses about stating that they would in support of this resolution. So I hope that council will move this forward, as again, this is something important that I think we need to have a statement about in the city of Aurora. So if there's any questions, I would be glad to address them.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you. Councilmember Lawson, is there any objection to moving item number 6B forward? Seeing none, item number 6B will move forward. Item number 7, items from the city manager. 7A, discussion of capital infrastructure master plan presentations. Our city manager, Jim Twombly.
Thanks, Mayor. Yes, I just want to quickly say that I have talked to the mayor and a couple of council members about, the need for us to, we talked at the winter workshop about moving forward with the capital improvement plan. And as I've mentioned, we have a long list of projects that departments have submitted as needs, and we want to start presenting those to council on a regular basis so that you become familiar with them, get an opportunity to ask questions, provide feedback, and we start having that dialogue. I think it's also important that we do this publicly so that our community can hear the discussion about what the needs are and what council thinks about those, and because we're going to need to start providing information to the community and communicating with them about these needs. So what I would like to do is begin taking about an hour of study session time once a month to have the different departments present those projects that they have identified. Again, like I said, so that you can become familiar with them, ask questions, and provide feedback. And so I'd like to start doing that in May. One of the things that we talked about for the spring workshop was to have a quick overview of how we went through the process of identifying these programs, and then probably have an initial presentation of some projects at that time. So all I really wanted to do tonight was introduce that as an idea, the one study session per month, devoting about an hour to presentations, and just having that ongoing over the course of the next number of months. So if there's no objections to that, we'll go ahead and plan that way.
Discussion?
Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thanks. I appreciate that. I think it's really important that we talk about our capital projects. A lot of times they get put on the back burner. It is going to be a presentation for the spring workshop. So when you say an hour per study session, 1 hour per month, are we going to manage the study sessions appropriately in terms of time? That's my comment.
We will we'll definitely make an effort to do that. As you know, every once in a while, there's a topic that maybe we don't have control over that will be time consuming, but we will try to even it out so that it doesn't become that one study session per month is really long. So yeah, we'll do the best we can to manage that.
Further discussion.
Mayor.
Councilmember Murillo.
Yes, thank you. City Manager Twombly, in these conversations, would the conversation around alley repavement come up? I'm sure you're aware that CDBG is no longer going to fund the lottery system for alley repavements, which is a big deal in the northwest part of Aurora, the older infrastructure. It's quite expensive to repave those, or sorry, pave them from nothing. Would that be included in these 1 hour conversations?
I don't recall if that was included as a project, but it's certainly that's part of the reason for having these conversations, for things like that to come up from council also.
Further discussion. Seeing none, is there any objection to adding 1 hour a month during a study session to discuss the capital needs of the city? Seeing no objection, we will then proceed to do that. 7B, state legislative update. Luke Palmisano.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Luke Palmisano, Intergovernmental Relations Manager here with the city. I'm here to present a state legislative update. The FSIR committee met on Friday, April 2nd, and took action on 3 bills. The committee discussed and took an active support position on Senate Bill 118, which concerns the creation of an alternative response pilot program for county departments of human and social services to address a report of mistreatment of an at-risk adult. The committee also gave staff the go-ahead to work to amend House Bill 1222, which concerns the regulation of family child care homes, and to engage with bill sponsors on Senate Bill 182, which concerns how school resource officers interact with students. There's no action items today before council, but I did want to stand before council and entertain any questions you may have.
Questions of staff? Seeing none, thank you very much for the update.
Thank you.
Items from the City Council. 8A, resolution of the City Council of the City of Aurora, Colorado, declaring the month of April each year as Second Chance Month in the City of Aurora. Is Councilmember Gardner here?
I am.
Okay, Councilmember Gardner, you are now recognized.
Thanks, Mayor. Just want to give a little bit of background on this resolution, talk a little bit about what Second Chance Month is and kind of the history behind it. So essentially, Second Chance Month just recognizes the fact that those that are previously incarcerated face significant hurdles to reenter society, things like education, jobs, housing, voting, and other things necessary for a productive life. And it's really just a statement that we want to make sure that those stigmas are removed, and so folks don't face what's sometimes called second prison. Second Chance Month was originally declared by the U.S. Senate in 2017. And also that same year, Colorado joined with 2 other states in declaring April a Second Chance Month, led by Cole Wist and Rhonda Fields. Since 2017, the number of states and jurisdictions that recognize Second Chance Month has continued to grow. Last year, 17 states, including Colorado, recognized Second Chance Month. And in fact, the timing's pretty good because just today, President Biden also recognized April 2021 as Second Chance Month nationwide. So that's just a little bit of background. And I guess if there's any questions, otherwise I'd ask for support to move this forward.
Questions?
Mayor?
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, I'm in support. My only question is, normally when we have a month declared, Sexual Abuse Month or Black History Month or any of those, it's usually in the form of a proclamation and not a resolution. So I was just wondering why it was not a proclamation.
So there are examples in the past of declaring months via resolution, firefighter cancer prevention awareness month, as well as gun violence awareness. So this isn't the first time this has happened. And the reason why I did it as a resolution rather than a proclamation is because I felt like it was important for council members to vote in support of this specifically.
Further questions?
Mayor Dave Gruber.
Councilmember Gruber.
I also support the underlying basis of this. I am concerned, though, that we are recognizing one side. So far in this year, according to our latest statistics, we've had 577 major crimes, major violent crimes in Aurora, and we've had 2,731 major property crimes. So we have got over 3,300 victims in the city of Aurora. I know the police are working hard to go after them, but crime, I'm just struggling with the fact that we're going to be recognizing the second chance, which again, I support people who have paid their debts to society, people that have gone through the justice system. I understand taking care of them, but at the same time, we've got thousands and thousands of victims in Aurora, and somehow or another, I think we need to recognize them as well. So I'm not calling for another resolution. I'm not calling for an amendment, but I do want to point out to the victims in Aurora that at least council is thinking about them.
Further discussion?
Mayor.
Councilmember Coombs.
So in similar fashion to having passed the Housing is a Human Right resolution, would this also lay groundwork for potential policy change within the city, for example, in our own hiring, as well as our own qualifications for public office, which do often also include formerly incarcerated people being excluded?
Is there anybody at staff or Councilmember Gardner that can answer that?
Well, I think we all are aware that a resolution is non-binding. So I believe you're referring to the city charter requirement that those with a prior felony conviction cannot serve on city council. So no, this wouldn't change that. That would require, from my understanding, would require a vote of residents in Aurora to change that requirement.
Right, sorry, clarification, not that this would change it, but that it would lay the groundwork as a statement of position from council for us to be in support of such changes.
I think you could interpret this however you'd like. I don't know how to answer that. I guess you can read into any resolution that comes forward and apply whatever philosophy you want behind it.
Further questions, discussion?
Yes, Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Well, clarification, because I think what I heard is these are two different things from what Councilmember Gardner is proposing as a resolution. The other, I also thought had to be a charter change to accommodate that someone would be able to run for city council with a prior felony conviction. Wouldn't that be a charter change and would have to go to the voters?
It's my understanding that that's the case. Let me defer to the city attorney's office.
And that is correct.
Okay, so this resolution does not indicate any inclination to do that.
No, that would be up to council on what next steps you would like to take.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Further discussion?
Mayor.
Councilmember McConnell.
Thank you, sir. I just want to, I guess, further clarify here that we're not really talking about that felony prohibition. I think that part of the question that Councilmember Coombs asked that went unanswered, and I guess this would be either HR or maybe the city manager can speak to this a bit, is that we would also reflect this in our hiring practices so we wouldn't discriminate against folks who are formerly incarcerated, for example. Is that correct?
Councilmember Gardner or staff?
That would be my hope. I think that's my interpretation of what it talks about. that those that have served their time are eligible to reenter society. So that would be my hope.
Further discussion?
Yes, I have another question, Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem.
And that's great because we don't want to have discrimination for, for employment at the city. However, wouldn't there be certain positions that would be precluded from that situation? I mean, if you're going to work in the finance department and I don't know, if you had a felony for embezzlement, for example, I mean, are there exceptions? And I don't know if we have it, either the attorney could answer that or HR.
Mayor Pro Tem, this is Rachel from the City Attorney's Office. And I do work closely with the Human Resources Department, and they do an individualized assessment on candidates who have been extended a conditional offer. One of the conditions that they have to fulfill is a background check. And if there is something in their background, then HR goes to the individual, has a conversation, and they look at the amount of time that's passed before the conviction, since the conviction. They also look at evidence of rehabilitation, and then they also look at the individual responsibilities of that position for which they have been offered a conditional offer to be hired. Is that responsive?
Yes, so it's situational and you take into account a lot of different variables.
Mm-hmm. And certainly there are some licensing requirements for certain positions like child care centers, and we follow the state statute with respect to that.
Thank you.
Further questions, discussion? Seeing none, is there any objection to moving 8A forward? Seeing none, 8A will move forward. 8B, 2009 Sustainability Plan status. Karen Hancock.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Kaufman and council members. I think Katie's going to make me a presenter here. I see the share function. I have a brief presentation for you. Get that started. Are you seeing the presentation in slideshow?
Very, very small.
If you could enlarge it, yeah.
There we go.
There we go.
As always, technical difficulties. Okay, so I'm Karen Hancock, a principal planner in the Planning and Development Services Department, and I've been working on environmental and special projects, including sustainability projects and programs and initiatives for the city of Aurora since 2006. From 2008 to 2010, I was the project manager for an update to the city's comprehensive plan. And for that update, City Council directed staff to add a sustainability component to the new plan. That 2009 comprehensive plan was replaced by Aurora Places when you adopted that plan in 2018. The draft strategic plan discussed at the winter workshop includes as one element preparing an environmental stewardship plan. To offer some context for that new initiative, council members Coombs and Marcano asked that staff provide a presentation to the full council at study session, summarizing the status of the sustainability strategies included in that 2009 comprehensive plan. I think in the hopes that putting the past effort into context might help clarify some next steps toward preparing a new plan. And then I don't always see all of you on my screen, so jump in with questions as we go. And also I've noticed that sometimes I can get a bit of an audio delay, so I may offer some longer pauses to ensure I'm not talking over you during discussion. So I'm going to go through this quickly because I know we have lots of discussion. So the 2009 update to the comprehensive plan was completed completely by city staff in-house. There was no budget for consultant support, and our total budget to produce the plan was $28,000. And for the refreshed plan, City Council requested that a sustainability plan element be added. So we included that element with three specific themes: energy efficiency and conservation, 1, renewable energy, 2, and economic growth based on the first 2 as number 3. And then this project commenced at the height of the Great Recession, and as the 2009 American Recovery and Reinvestment Act was being rolled out. So the city received, at the very same time we were doing this plan, $2.8 million from the Department of Energy in a formula allocation from the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant, or EECBG. And so because of the timing of the funding, that guided the development of our sustainability plan. So the EECBG funded 14 separate projects that were developed with significant input from the community. We had a robust outreach effort that included a number of focus groups and workshops with different sectors of the community, and a very well-attended open house event shown in this slide. We hosted 200 attendees who had the opportunity to visit booths and tables set up in the lobby. We had presentations with keynote speakers from the community and the National Renewable Energy Laboratory in Golden, and that outreach component took a full year to complete. Okay, and then I'm not going to take up a lot of time describing the strategies that are included in your packet, so I'm just going to go over quickly a few of the key categories. This is what the tables in your backup look like, and I have all of these tables ready to present if there are questions about individual strategies. But I think for now, I'm just going to summarize in that we had the sustainability plan had 7 general strategies for overarching sustainability. There were 12 strategies to address energy efficiency and conservation, 6 for renewable energy, and 9 for economic growth. And then just quickly, the overarching sustainability strategy category included having a PhD student do our carbon accounting. That was a $6,000 effort. And the first year that Xcel Energy had city energy use in a format that could be exported was in 2007. So we used 2007 as the base year. And the goal adopted by City Council was 10% reduction over 2007 levels by 2025. And so that goal was very moderate, and we were a growing city, and growth consumes energy, and we recognize that. This was also a very new thing to have a greenhouse gas emissions inventory, and many communities around us had very aggressive goals, and they ended up not being attainable, and we did not want to be in that category. So although the city and the community implemented myriad projects to reduce emissions, I think the credit for meeting the goal 10 years early goes to Xcel Energy because their grid became cleaner and more efficient. And then, as I mentioned earlier, EECBG funded $2.8 million worth of projects to save energy over time. And although we recently closed the recycling facility for nearly 10 years that it operated, it was a very important community resource. Local food production is now in the UDO, and Aurora Water has committed resources to support local community gardens. Land use is the foundation of many of these sustainability initiatives, and the new codes adopted in 2019 are comprehensive. And of course, the UDO can be updated as council directs. Okay, next slide. Oh, went back too far. The city processed, as part of that EECBG money, $1 million in direct payments to residents and business owners in Aurora. And that was one of the most fun things I've ever done, is send out checks to people. We also have had new projects at Acre. We're still getting projects proposed to Acre that may be coming to council soon. Economic growth, it can be demonstrated as an outcome based on showcase projects to demonstrate success, like the revenue generated from our leases to solar developers on city property. We, I think Jason Batchelor started our Green Print initiative that reduces the amount of office paper we generate and eventually have to get rid of. And we do pay for waste hauling based on weight and volume. We had international interest in Aurora to locate businesses, including Cooper Lighting as a subsidiary of Eaton, which generates $18 billion worldwide annually. We had the installation of a compressed natural gas fueling station. There's a private fueling station in Aurora that supports heavy truck fueling across the region. And then AEDC is able to respond to solicitations that require a sustainability component. So when Yuri Gorloff gets one of those, he contacts me and we can get some information together to be more competitive. So that's really helped us. And then I can't leave you tonight without giving a shout out to the sustainability projects, programs, initiatives that we have currently. Different divisions in public works are taking the lead to upgrade existing facilities. They implement the green building resolution. They review new codes. they lead the effort to adopt new codes as they come out, especially the International Energy Conservation Code. And then the Real Property Division helps us generate that revenue from solar arrays. And then Aurora Water is just a superhero. They find new ways to cut energy costs. They're always doing studies. They reduce water consumption, improve water quality, and they provide incentives and education. Rock stars, and then planning works across the departments to increase the number of recycling events and offer resources to the community and ensure that development customers have options for including sustainable development if they choose that direction. And we've certainly had several of those in the past 10 years. And then with that, I'm just going to leave it there and get your questions.
Questions?
Mayor?
Councilmember Coombs.
So between the backup and Karen's brief presentation, I think we have a lot of things that the city is doing and has done, and a lot of things that staff across a lot of departments are working on, which is exciting and important. In having this conversation with Karen, I wasn't able to actually find anything before talking to her about a lot of these initiatives, including greenhouse gas inventory, which is now fairly standard to have. And so I guess I just want to talk about what we can do as we're moving toward implementing this in the strategic plan to be more strategic and more coordinated. So for example, a 2007 greenhouse gas inventory is not reflective of 2021 greenhouse gas uses. So I'd like to have a conversation moving forward about doing a new inventory because it is time, as well as how we can coordinate the efforts that are happening in staff across so many different departments through having an actual program in the city dedicated to sustainability. So those are, and then of course there are many things that fall under that, continuations of current activities as well as pursuing additional activities. So not so much a question as discussion and food for thought for my colleagues about what we can be doing moving forward.
Further discussion, questions?
Mayor.
Councilmember Marcano.
Yes, I do have a quick question on the sustainability coordinator position. Why did that never materialize?
Hi, this is Nancy Freed, if I might add, Karen. It was in the Public Works budget for this year, but it was eliminated last year during the reductions when we were trying to make budgets. So there were 5 Public Works positions, and this was one of them.
All right. I do have another question, Mayor.
Please proceed.
Thank you. So let's talk about waste hauling for pros. What exactly is our current strategy with that? You know, they collect a lot of down branches and leaves and things of that nature. What do we do with that?
And I'm hoping there's somebody from pros on, since that's not my area.
I thought we made mulch.
We do, I'm pretty sure, but the nuts and bolts, I didn't know if Brooke Bell was still on.
Hi, this is Brooke. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. So we do, when we have big storms and we collect all those branches, we do mulch, and then we have mulch available and distribute it. I think our bigger waste issues are just the waste that we collect, the trash that we collect in the parks, which goes to the dad's facility.
Okay.
Further discussion.
Mayor.
Further discussion. Councilmember Coombs.
Yeah, so I just have a question about that. When waste is being collected in parks, what kinds of recycling and other options are available or used for any recyclable materials that may be collected?
Well, and I know Brooke can probably answer this question. I did want to say, though, that we started the recycling in city facilities, and we were very careful. Those streams get contaminated so easily, and without proper education, it ends up going to the landfill anyway. And I can speak on behalf of what we were looking at, 10, 15 years ago, was it was not appropriate for parks. We were getting contaminated waste streams. Based on what I've seen, I think that happens still even in our city facilities where we have education. So education is going to have to be a key component for any city property, any city facility, and it's pervasive.
Further questions, comments? Seeing none, thank you very much for the presentation. This was just information. There's no action required. Okay. Thank you very much for the presentation. Are there any call-ups of City Council Policy Committee items? Seeing none, any miscellaneous items? Seeing none, items removed from the agenda, if any, there are none. With that, meeting is adjourned.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.